Right, I'm not going to spend too long on the sort of state of digital inclusion, digital exclusion. If you do want to know more about it, then I would suggest the Citizens Advice Bureau's recent report on face-to-face digital exclusion is probably a really good starting point for that. So last year, the government released the Digital Inclusion Blueprint, and that really outlined the barriers to digital exclusion in New Zealand. So motivation, access, skills, and trust are the four pillars they found. And I guess there's a bit of criticism after last year about, say, lack of action on the blueprint. So it sort of outlined what the state of play was, but didn't sort of outline so much what was going to happen to improve things. And then earlier this year, Internet New Zealand put together their 5-point plan with input from many others, including Lianza, and that called on the government to use the digital gains made during COVID to really build momentum for the future. Right, so that's sort of a brief summary of where we're at. So what are we doing at Auckland Libraries? So we've got quite a variety of things on the go. So I guess like many public libraries in New Zealand, probably most would think now, Lawrence might be advised otherwise, we're involved with Skinny Jump. If you don't know, that's a subsidised broadband provided by the Spark Foundation and administered by the Digital Inclusion Alliance Aotearoa. We've signed up, I think, probably about 2 years ago now to that, and like as I think with most partners, we found that it's a bit tricky to build momentum, but we're really going quite strong in some areas. So our libraries in, say, South Auckland in particular have really good uptake. What works for us really well with it is not as delivering it in person, but if we have a branch, say, then the branches that really work well are where just about all the staff are trained up in how to sign up people to Skinny Jump. So that means that when the customer comes in, they can be signed up on the spot right away. Also works really well if it's delivered alongside other digital skills, digital literacy, digital skills programs. So you come along to the program, and then at the end of it, you can sign up to Skinny Jump. The staff with good community connections really help it. It really spreads the word out there, because word of mouth is definitely the best way of promoting the program. In Auckland, we very much have a focus across our services, not just digital, on delivering programs, targeting them to meet local needs. So radically local used to be the way they called it a while back. So that means our digital skills programs are very much library efforts in partnership or targeted to that community need. So we don't run a set series of digital skills programs across all of our branches. They're much more localized efforts, and so that has pluses and minuses. So it does mean that a branch can organize their classes to really meet the needs of their customers, so they could co-design it if necessary, so it's at the time and it's at the length that that community needs. So we'll also get libraries, say like Onehunga, who I understand will do classes in Chinese to meet their customers' want, and then elsewhere they might just do say device-only programs, so just helping people use their e-readers or just helping people use their smart device rather than, say, desktop computing, which there might not be such a need for. I've also seen areas, say, like Welsford. So Welsford, a few months ago, they delivered a program that was using iPads to lift digital skill needs of adults with special needs. So, and that was in partnership with a community group up there that that identified needed some assistance. We also do robotics and coding classes. I think many other public libraries in New Zealand do that these days. It's not terribly innovative these days. It doesn't mean that it's not a worthwhile service, of course. One thing we did try 2 years ago was a partnership with Katoitui Trust. So Katoitui Trust are a Manaia Kalani offshoot, if that means anything to you. So they work with a cluster of schools in Papakura to get devices in the hands of the students there, and to also ensure the staff have the right skills to lift digital literacy in the students. So what we identified there was they had the devices, so they had Chromebooks and they were going quite well with that, but they didn't know how to take the next step to, say, teach students about 3D printing or robotics and those sorts of creative digital technologies. And they weren't quite ready to take the plunge yet into investing into the technology. So what we did was we, Auckland Libraries, bought 3D printers, we bought robots, we got some students from Auckland University of Technology, some master's students there who were masters of creative digital technology. And we lent the devices to the schools on a rostered basis, and we arranged for the master's students to go in and sort of coach the teachers on how to use the technology. And yeah, that went pretty well. We certainly got good use of the technology. Where we stalled a bit was getting the teachers to really integrate it into their lesson plans. So rather than having, say, a set period of the day that was just teaching about coding, actually using coding to teach the students about mathematics, so sort of applying it into the general curriculum. And then we also do programs like, say, general employment programs, certainly very timely at the moment. And so that obviously involves a digital element, so job searching, CV writing and so forth. So that targeted approach, so really based in the community and partnering with local organisations, it works really well for us, and it really makes sure our programs meet the community needs. But the problem is it means you're not sharing the knowledge so much, because you're doing these programs and slightly in isolation, and trying to make sure that your other branches, so one up at Wellsford and one Waiuku, they're learning from each other's experiences. That's where we're having a bit of trouble. And probably nothing new for us. I think we've been struggling a bit with that for probably the past 10 years since Auckland Libraries amalgamated. So later on, I think we'll do a bit of a brainstorm, and we'll see how libraries in general we think might be able to share skills with each other. Where are we? Go back to this. Hopefully you're seeing my screen again now. So recently, this picture on the bottom left is a Matata Lab. So it's something else we've been, something we got probably end of last year. So if you're not familiar with it, it's like a coding, what would you call it? What's called a device, I guess, a series of devices that help children learn coding, but it doesn't use a screen. So we know that in some of our communities, parents, caregivers are a bit sort of anti-screen. They see the kids at home on screen, they see the kids at school on screen, so they don't want them at the library. So this uses these devices, and it's like a series of cards, and it teaches the children the principles of coding. Right. Right, so we might start moving into the breakout sessions already. So I think if we get together in groups and we discuss, share what we are doing at our libraries or what we know others are doing. And I think if we try to structure that sort of around those 4 barriers that are in the digital inclusion blueprint. So motivation, so what are you doing to help show people that digital is worthwhile, that it's worth them making the effort, because it's quite a big effort if you have low digital literacy to learn those skills. Access, that's probably something we're quite strong on in libraries. So public computers, public Wi-Fi, skinny jump to help people get online. What else is out there that we're doing? What else could we be doing? So I'm interested to hear, does anyone know if anyone is lending Wi-Fi hotspots? That's something that seems to be quite popular in the United States. I'm not aware of it happening too much elsewhere. Skills, so basic computer skills and digital banking. Those are programs that seem to go quite well and have quite good uptake. But what else is being done out there? So is anyone teaching any sort of advanced sort of skills? Not something you'd expect to find in formal education, but I don't know, photo editing or audio editing, something like that, for instance. And then trust. So trust is perhaps the slightly trickier part. That digital banking course would be something that would help with that. But how do you help people feel confident in that to use digital platforms? Yeah, especially pertinent at the moment with, yeah, sometimes all you hear about is fake news and so forth on the internet and hacking. So how do you really help people navigate online world safely? Right.
So if we have groups of 5 and we split up for 10 minutes, then everybody has about 2 minutes each to talk. Do you think that's enough?
Yeah, I think that'd be good. And if we could just make sure that one person in each group, please, takes notes so we can share back with the group later on. Back, I think we're all here. Who wants to go first? Hope you took notes.
I'll go first if you like.
Thanks, Anne.
Okay, well, we only had one person who's actually worked in a public library in our group, so that was a bit unfortunate, but we still ran out of time, so that was quite good. It showed that we had quite a good discussion there. It was Helen from Upper Hutt, and she was saying that their community, they've got some very tech-savvy people in their community. So that was good. And they come in for things like to use the free Wi-Fi and for printing and scanning, which is cheaper in the library. And she says the other sort of main group of people coming in for assistance are seniors who've been gifted devices and need a little bit of assistance with them. So Helen felt that they didn't really have an issue with the motivation, although, you know, we discussed how perhaps she doesn't know what she doesn't know. It's difficult to know if there's a lack of motivation in the community, but she didn't feel that there was really. Helen, do jump in if I'm misrepresenting you. For access, then they've got a whole range of things there, as I say, what free Wi-Fi, printing, scanning. They've also got they've got a book a librarian service where you can book to sit with somebody for up to an hour to help to talk you through an issue you're having with a device or some kind of technology. They've also got Stepping Up and they've got Spark Jump. They felt that the skills element, the one issue they were missing was around 3D printers and the robots. So they only have a small number of staff, I think that's right, isn't it, Helen, who can assist with that. So they can't have it available all the time. So I suppose that's an issue of access as well. It's not readily available all the time because they don't always have staff who could help patrons with that if they needed assistance. So that was an issue. So she's looking for ideas about how they can go about that, or how other library services have attacked that, whether they had one specialist or all staff trained. So that was a little bit of a problem. So as I said, there's no real issues with motivation. The one thing is sort of promotion of relevant content. So she was talking about lynda.com and how that, they tried to promote it, but it was a bit disappointing, the use of that. So trying to promote it so that people realize what's out there, which might give them further motivation to go online. So I think that's about it, unless anybody else in the group wants to jump in.
Can I just jump in there? Well done, thank you, Anne. We have Spark Jump. We are looking at stepping up, and we're hearing really good things from other libraries that have employed that. So that's what we're looking at. Yeah, thank you.
Right, let's go next.
Shall I go next, Philip?
Please.
Okay. I was in a lovely group with Ruth, Amy, Sarah, and Suzanne, I think. And we started out talking about trust and how we can get, so how we can get our communities more trusting of digital aspects of what we're offering. So one of our libraries was offering, one of the people in our group's libraries was offering the screens of the daily Jacinda and Ashley show as a good option for official information. And similarly, I talked a little bit about what we do on our social streams in terms of making sure that we're offering informational and trustworthy info to our customers. We talked a little bit about the access that we offer in our libraries. So some of us were running things like Stepping Up seniors classes on a multitude of different topics, including online banking and also digital futures classes, which were, I think they were just starting them off. We talked a little bit about motivation and how we sometimes struggle to engage some of our audiences, more specifically our older audiences, when it comes to digital things. And Book a Librarian was a really strong option for teaching in these situations, but having a obvious payoff for something was probably the best way to convince people to have a buy-in. So something like connecting with your family and how we can teach you to do that, or getting access to magazines that you might not otherwise get so immediately. And that was us.
Thank you. Someone else? Must be someone. Come on. I'll say my group then. So Megan shared that in Heart Today use as Skinny Jump, and of course they provide free access to the internet. Mentioned using library resources, free library resources like streaming video as a way to motivate people to might get online. Better Digital Futures program, and yeah, building trust as part of a conversation with customers when you're about what to look out for. Natasha mentioned again, Stepping Up, Digital Futures, Book a Librarian sessions to help people. And she said about how staffing for them and geographic spread of their customers is a real tricky thing for them. So getting an appropriate number of people along to a class is very difficult. And if they had more staff, someone else, perhaps via the DIA funding, would be really good. Someone who could go out and deliver outreach services to meet the customer where they are. Joanna, she's in tertiary library. She So she shared about information literacy teaching in order to find reputable sources online, and how students were provided with devices when they went into lockdown. After that, we had a bit of a conversation in a group around staff ability and how that is can be a limiting factor. And I shared that we know in some of our libraries here in Auckland that often it'll be identified as one person's job to be the digital person, and that can be a real problem, and that programs seem to work better when everyone on a team takes responsibility for digital inclusion. And so we had a bit of a discussion around sort of a team norms and so forth there. Right, I think there might still be a couple of other groups to share.
Kia ora, I can speak for our breakout group. I might chip in too. Who was our scribe? So we did run out of time, but we did start with motivation and reflected on the lockdown level 4 particularly, just flung that into such sharp focus as to who was included and who was excluded from a digital viewpoint, and that bridge or that kind of vacuum between the two became so much more apparent through that experience. So that being a motivator for being included meant that there was a vast array of various services and content and support structures that were open to you if you were digitally included during that time. And we reflected also on the fact this speaks to both our communities but also our staff and our workforces and our colleagues and teams. There was a bit of a phenomenon of some exclusion for some of our staff as well at this point. In terms of access, I'm from Hutt City, so you've already spoken to the examples that we have on base here, but Melanie had mentioned kind of still, I guess, breaking into some of these areas and looking for some ideas and some inspiration for what's working well, and how to kind of get that momentum and that traction. Is that right, Melanie? That sounds good. Yep. Not there. In terms of skill and trust, it's been really interesting to hear what some of the other breakout groups have discussed, particularly around trust and how to build that. But I go back to a point you made earlier around existing community relationships and how we can really leverage that, that kind of phenomenal characteristic, I suppose, that we build, that our staff build with our customers in all sectors, I would say. I think it was mentioned, but we've had a digital wellbeing initiative here at Hutt City that takes a whānau-based approach to staying safe in online environments, but also building some core fundamental skill sets as well in digital literacy. So please sing out if I've missed anything, other lovely breakout people. I think that kind of covers our lovely. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone get anything else to add? Anything you haven't covered off? If not, move on to the next bit. No? Okay. Feel free to put anything in the chat that we might have missed then. So I thought next we could move on to another breakout. Maybe you can probably keep this one a bit shorter, maybe, Helen, maybe like 5 minutes. Just say, how do we build on what's been done? So there's been some really good progress on digital inclusion recently, but how do we build on that? So things I'm interested in is digital inclusion mentioned in your annual plan or your team plans? How do you ensure the staff have the right skills? How do you ensure they're confident and they're going to develop? Do you put digital inclusion in any of your position descriptions? Who do you partner with at the moment? So I mentioned before about a special needs group that was in Wellsford. We also partner with Accelerating Aotearoa and of course Digital Inclusion Alliance via Stepping Up. Stepping Up and Spark Jump. Who else out there do you partner with? Who else could we partner with? And then if you run out of time in 5 minutes, I doubt it, then maybe how would you spend that government funding money? then, so I'll work on that, 5 minutes, come back, share, and then I think we'll talk about more how we can learn from each other, how we can share our experiences. All right, who wants to go first this time?
Okay, I'll leap in. Just keep the ball rolling. So yes, digital inclusion is explicitly mentioned in various annual plans and strategic plans at Upper Hutt, in Hutt, Lower Hutt, and at Napier. They were the kind of representative public libraries in our group. I did talk to the point that we here at Lower Hutt run a community co-design process to build or craft our library strategy. And the themes that came through really predominantly were accessibility and inclusion, but not necessarily specifically digital. It was in all forms, guises and shapes about inclusion and accessibility, but definitely came through as a strong theme. When we talked about staff skills and preparedness, I suppose, we got staff with the right skills. Great quote from Melanie. Some staff, particularly staff who've kind of been in the seat for a wee while, are here for the people, not the technology. And we talked about kind of leveraging different skill sets and sort of, buddying up the people who are here for the technology and not the people. And also looked at how crucial staff support is, continuous and ongoing learning and development. The learning framework we have here at Hutt City, we presented on at the Lianza conference last year, and I'm really happy to share that out. It includes, course sets to bring everyone up to bar across the board. Have I missed anything, group? We didn't get on to partners, but I will just say Digital Inclusion Alliance, Aotearoa, who I think are represented here. CAB as well. We work quite closely with the Citizens Advice Bureau. And banks too, as well as a number of other community organisations, but I won't hog the bandwidth. I'll go on to another group.
Thank you. Right, someone else?
I'll take our group again if you like.
Thank you.
Cool. So we talked a little bit about being a little bit unsure about necessarily digital inclusion in terms of plans from a frontline perspective. I know that, Philip, you've already covered Auckland Libraries and will continue to do so. So you've covered my part. We actually talked a little bit about what we would spend our money on if we got that sweet funding. And that was primarily laptops, staff time and more staff, various devices in branches, expansion of community resources, including digital accessibility items within those community resource locations. More inclusive collections was a big one as well. And we didn't get to partners because we just wanted to spend that money. So that's us.
All right, anyone else?
I can go if you like. So I think, as Kat said, she spoke for Upper Hutt as well there, so it is in the annual plans. And it obviously at council level, and so there's an expectation on the libraries that they are going to contribute to that. We talked more, about the skills actually in the first breakout as well, and I think Helen feels that that is an area they need to focus on a little bit, staff skills, and not just that everybody has to be confident. So not just, as you were saying, Philip, having the one person, who's the tech bro or girl, but making sure that everybody is confident. So how to ensure across the board that all staff are confident, and they don't run away when they see a patron approaching them with a Chromebook or a Kindle or something. And that's actually what Helen would spend her money on if she had the government funding: staff training and trying to support staff and bolster their confidence. And that's as far as we got.
Thank you.
around, oh, no, getting this right. Our group had a chat around, I guess, local government and the roles that schools play as well. I'll leave Philip to talk about Auckland Libraries and the great work that they're doing. Thank you, Philip. But yeah, I guess it is important to have your local government bodies and your school groups involved in deciding your well, not so much deciding your policy, but in setting the direction and what support that they need to. I know that co-design is a massive part of what we're all trying to do at the moment. We didn't quite get to how we'd spend our money, although one of our group did mention once they are able to get Wi-Fi in their library, it's a very specialized library, that they're hoping to bolster their programming around that, and computers as well.
Thank you, Dan. Right, our group, we talked about reaching seniors, so through Age Concerns, Senior Net or University of the Third Age. Also around potential to partner with marae or iwi. So yeah, I'm surprised that hadn't come up earlier. There's been a bit of work in Auckland, I think, working with marae, but not so much in terms of digital that I'm aware of. If anyone else has, yeah, let us know. And yeah, around when people come in and present their devices, how that's especially tricky, and how do you train staff for that? And perhaps the answer there is maybe to train people to be confident to have a go themselves, but that's yeah, really quite tricky thing to get a hold of. Right, so we're probably getting close to 2 o'clock already. This is flying by us. Farron or Durant gonna have anything to talk about. So maybe if we probably don't have time to break out now, but as I mentioned, in Auckland, we do programs that we think are quite targeted to the communities, but that means there's a risk that they kind of exist in isolation of it. And Courtney will attest to this, that we have an issue in Auckland here with trying to get libraries to share their stories, trying to share their success, and so that we can celebrate it, but also we can learn from it. And so how do we do that? We're struggling to do that in Auckland, but how might we do that on an even larger scale? How might we do that across New Zealand? So how might we share information and knowledge across the sector so that we can each learn from each other? Who's got any ideas?
I'm going in. So it strikes me that if we've got a number of different libraries and there's a concept, at least from the government, that there should be a digital inclusion, that there should be a central place that we refer everybody to, regardless of what institution we work for. So that would have an agreed set of papers we could print off, you know, because there's a certain range of devices, for instance. We could then get buy-in from the manufacturers or from the various things, but it would strike me that having a centralized point, because I know that we refer them to our own websites, perhaps we are all giving out different information from within our local communities, like you say, but if you've got a sort of overarching website that allows you to put forward the success stories or put forward the ideas, the engagement with marae and whakapapa, and that way we don't have to have a catch up to share those. They're already there and we can just refer everybody to them.
Yep. And so you're thinking that's a government role, or are you thinking?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, it could be a Lianza role where there is a central place for all those members to go to. Ideally, it would be a government role if the 5 policy is there, you know. And I think, yeah, I mean, because again, agreed standards of literacy for all communities, you know, would be a great start for digital. And even if it's basic access to devices, then that's obviously a good start. It's the starting point. But yeah, it strikes me that that's something that we're all working away in our silos, like we tend to in libraries and other institutions. But it would be great to have that platform. You could argue that Facebook and that we have those strategies there already, but we need someone to take authority for it.
Can I just
jump in and say, I think PLNZ are looking at that now for their members. They're looking at a sort of knowledge sharing platform. So there was a webinar I've seen recently, and I had to leave it, so I hadn't seen it all, but I believe that is part of what they're looking at. That obviously is public libraries. So perhaps there's room for something that encompasses all libraries.
I might just echo that, Natasha, and say, yeah, an idea of a kind of like a knowledge bank or a resource toolkit, I suppose, that is co-created by members of PLNZ and then obviously shared out and disseminated to members of PLNZ is something that we've definitely seen interest in and a kind of appetite for. I'd also just comment that the National Library Partnership Funding Program is looking at digital skills and digital skills development, and the idea of kind of, you know, it's a 2-year sort of injection of support and funding and resource, but the idea of this being sustainable and enduring into the future. And so there have been some ideas kicked about in this kind of, you know, design phase around a community of practice, somehow drawing together a cohort across the country so that all of the gains that we make, all of the progress that we put in place is not lost. And that would easily leverage back onto Brent. I think it was Brent saying just now that you know, there could be some kind of centralised forum or you know, place to be able to share success stories, refer people to, yeah, and kind of harness all the great individual efforts that we put in.
That's good. All right. Any last thoughts before we wrap up?
I'd just like to say thank you very much, Philip.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. I think I'm reasonably confident speaking in public, but I've never been quite as nervous as I was this morning doing this. I really wasn't sure how it was going to go. Anyway, now I'm anxious able to do another webinar in the future, maybe. Yeah, thank you very much, everyone. One thing I'll add is there was a discussion at Lianza conference last year around digital inclusion as well. So I don't know if any of you were at that. And as a result of that, a Slack channel was started that was meant to sort of continue the conversation and didn't quite happen. So I think my action going away from this is going to start posting on that Slack channel and keep it up to date. And perhaps, Helen, in a follow-up to this, I can share you the link to the Slack channel. And then if anyone else wants to contribute to the conversation, they can do so there.
We'll send out the link to the edited video recording to all the registered participants, and I can add in any other links that are of interest in that email, so we can get that sent out within the week, I think.
Thanks, Ellen. Right, time for a karakia.
Thank you.
Unihia, unihia, unihia ki te uru tapanui, ki a wātia, ki a mama, ti tina akau, ti tinana, ti wairua I ti ara takata, ko e rā I rongo, whakairia ake ki ranga, ki a tina, tina, hui e, tai ki e. Kia ora, thank you very much, everyone.